I've seen people go broke and rather than lose face and look like they don't have money, they'll leave their kids in private school.
Really? Oh, yeah.
It's one of the last things that happens is the kids get pulled out of private school.
Okay.
And, there's lots of similar things like that. The appearance of something is important, whether it's true behind the scenes or not.
Got to keep face.
Got to save face and look like you are successful. Look like drive the right car, wear the right brand of clothing. All of those things.
Faye and Paddock, I know this time Today my news you need to have along the way. Hello, I'm Faye Waterman. This is Conversations with Faye, and my guest today is Bronwyn Boyle. And what we're going to be talking about today is the strengths of archetypes. Now, there are 4 main archetypes that we talk about, but there are many, many more. So let's dive into the strengths of archetypes with Bronwyn and see what she has to say. Welcome back, Bronwyn, to our second episode of Archetypes. And this time we're going to be talking about the natural strengths in archetypes. What is all that about?
Well, think about, school teachers are really good at picking archetypes in kids. So you can hear a teacher will describe a child in a certain way.
Yep.
And, whether it's, we were talking about the athlete before, and the athlete's a difficult one because it's actually a physical thing that people are known for and they take it very literally.
Yes.
But the athlete is ultimately about stamina and personal best. So when you see someone approach a job or a task, the way that they methodically, their thought process around it and how they approach it is very different to, say, a creative or an artist and how they view it. And it's a completely different, the outcome may be, or the objective may be the same, the outcome will be different because the approach is completely different. Whereas an Olympians, this whole, because they're gods, all right? So their ability, and you'll hear it in the commentating of the Olympics, when there's truly an Olympian performing, it will be that their ability is not of this earth, that they are godlike in how they approach things. And you see it often with Olympians when their career is over. It's like the party's over, the lights are turned off, and they come falling down to earth with a thud and they're back being a mere mortal again.
And what am I going to do now?
Now what? And so it's how do I repurpose that
natural strength.
That natural strength, that natural ability. How do you, when you don't have that more literal physical expression of it that you're known for and your identity has been wrapped around? And you see it in different archetypes all the time where people, that's a muscle that they work to the exclusion of others.
Yeah, to the extreme.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, another sport comes to mind, cricketers who go into playing cricket and they're really good cricketers, but when they finish, what do?
What now?
What now?
There's only so many commentating jobs.
That's right.
There's only, so if that's the only muscle you've ever worked,
what do you do?
What do you do? Yeah.
And not everyone can be a commentator. Even if you've played cricket and you know all about cricket, there are commentators and there are commentators, aren't there?
Well, there's only so many spots.
Yeah.
It's a bit like you want to be the CEO, but there's only one CEO of the company. There might be 10 or however many directors, but if you want the top job there's only so many to go around. So,
and there are only certain people that will fit into those.
Right, and a corporation can take a different direction and the culture changes or something happens. and they're looking for something new. You could have been at the company for 20 years, know it inside out, be a wonderful steward of that company moving forward. But they want someone fresh to come in and do a bit of a sweep.
And that you said in the first episode, people don't like change.
No.
And so someone like that who knows the backbone of the company and knows how it runs, they may change something in it so that it improves how it works and brings in fresh blood. They can't cope with that. So what's their archetype?
Well, it's okay. So it might not necessarily be like they don't cope. It might feel like a betrayal. That's a good example of many different types of situations where people have invested, prostitute, they have invested in either money, time, effort, energy, parts of themselves into a place, a family, a corporation, a business, whatever.
All of themselves.
It doesn't come back.
What sort of conversations do you need to have along the way to make sure that they're on track or they're heading in the right direction, if I can say that? And that may be not the way it's meant to be asked.
I don't know that you can necessarily manage it quite that way. However, what you can do is have a reality check along the way.
But what if someone doesn't want to have that reality check along the way?
Then it's going to feel like a big-ass betrayal.
Yeah.
Think of it as a marriage. I'm having a good life. I think you're having a good life. How lucky are we? And then it starts out little niggles that you don't mention because you don't want to upset the other person. You just want to let's just keep things calm. And before you know it, that problem doesn't go away. It just, every now and again, it'll peak, or you can tolerate it or put up with it, or it's okay for a period of time because it doesn't affect something else, but then something shifts.
Okay, so they suppress it, really. And
no, they ignore it. Yes, suppressing is one way of putting it, but I mean it's more, again, back to those four fundamentals. A child doesn't ask. You don't ask what you don't want the answer to. And to those questions are brave because you risk rejection, you risk someone not giving you the answer you want. You risk, there's a risk involved, whether it's a conscious thing or not. You don't want to rock the boat. You want to keep the status quo for a period of time. People everywhere are doing that. It's not. I still do it occasionally. I'm more likely to bring stuff up because I see the trajectory of where that goes.
Yeah, you can see into the future of how it's going to pan out if you don't do something about it, nip it in the bud.
If I want to be able to change the outcome, that's probably going to. So if I suspect there's an argument, is it better to have the argument now or in 2 years' time?
Right now.
Yeah.
Because it gets built on and it gets stopped.
I've done a lot of work with conflict resolution. The earlier it's brought up and put into the open, the better.
Yep.
Because it otherwise it just gets bigger. The consequences.
So that distress or that dis-ease can eventually create disease in someone if they don't speak up. They don't ask the questions. They don't allow their feelings or whatever's bothering them. They don't speak about it because of the fear of what? Judgment? The fear of rejection?
All of the above.
All of it. Okay, so that comes back to, for me, that's my lot in life. If I'm not going to step up and ask and fight for what I think's right for myself, I just have to sit in that situation of all those archetypes and suffer the consequences. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, I think there is timing. There's tolerance for pain.
And some people have a high tolerance for pain.
And a lot of that tolerance is brought about by looking at the people around you. So it's...
What do you mean by looking at the people around you? If you're tolerating it yourself, Do you have to be considerate about the people around you? Is it going to affect
No,
them?
the biggest influence of how and when people make those difficult decisions is around what age are the kids.
Should I leave or should I go?
Do I stay or do I go? Do
Yeah.
I upset this household now? Am I a better parent? Like, there's 1,000 questions that go through someone's head before they actually make a decision. Sometimes not making a decision is all they can do right now. The reasons people... It was when the pain gets too big, when it's like, I don't have a choice. Think of it as, I think it's like the wall of cereal. When I was a kid, there was like 4 or 5 cereals. There was Wheaties, cornflakes, muesli was posh. So I love the analogy of the wall of cereal. When I was a kid growing up, you had Wheaties, cornflakes, porridge.
Mm-hmm.
Muesli was posh.
Oh, yes, we didn't have that.
Like, it was a special occasion, and occasionally you got Fruit Loops.
Oh.
And they were like eating lollies, that it was special. Whereas now you go into the supermarket and there is a wall of cereal. There is 300 plus cereal boxes types on the wall. There's 30 different types of muesli alone.
You counted them?
Well, I've got no idea, but you know what I mean. Like, yes. I'm just using it as an example of, you're spoilt for choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so while you've got choice, you'll spend money on things, and as your budget gets tighter, your choices get less.
Yes, true.
And before you know it, you're back to Wheaties. So
your choices are limited.
Yeah, so you start out with a lot of choices, and while people can afford certain decisions, they will make decisions they can afford to make.
Yes.
And then one day they can't afford those decisions anymore.
Yeah.
And that's when the pain point normally kicks in.
And that's when they start making those decisions.
Until they literally run out of money, they will pay money to not make the decision. They often on reflection will say, I should have done this years ago.
Do they also put themselves into debt? That's another...
Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't have to face the consequences of what's going on in reality.
Again, back to the motivation behind the choices. Yeah. Is it that this is what you want to do and be, and I will do and be it for as long as I can, come hell or high water?
Until I can't do it anymore.
I've seen people go broke and rather than lose face and look like they don't have money, they'll leave their kids in private school.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the last things that happens is the kids get pulled out of private school.
Okay.
And, there's lots of similar things like that. The appearance of something is important, whether it's true behind the scenes or not.
Got to keep face.
Got to save face and look like you are successful. Look like drive the right car, wear the right brand of clothing. All of those things. It doesn't mean they're not fine choices. It doesn't mean don't make those choices. It's not about that judgment. It's the self regulation of what is the price I pay for this choice? What is the price others pay on my behalf for me to be able to make this choice?
But do they ask themselves those questions, or do they just go along until such time it gets to the place where they can't do it anymore? They don't even ask.
Oh, I think there's moments in time when the choice is available to them.
Yeah. But they avoid it?
Yes. Or something else happens, or they get a last-minute reprieve. Something happens. I mean, it sounds like I'm feeling a little evasive. I don't mean it in that. I think people like black and white. They like yes or no. There's a lot of grey in how people arrive at the decisions they arrive at. There's a lot of history, especially when in considerations around family, considerations around going into business with friends.
Never do it.
Well, there's some really successful friends who You go into business with people you know, like, and trust.
Yes, yes. But do you sometimes that know, like, and trust dissipates, and
But it's the ability to have the conversations along the way, which is back to the original point of the conversation.
the raw and the real.
Is what are the sitting down and having those regular touch points to course correct, because people's lives do move in different directions. And to be able to say to your business partner or your partner, you know, this is kind of where it's at for me right now.
And it's that honest communication. It's that honest conversations.
As honest as you can be sometimes, because you don't always know the answers. You just know something's changed.
Yeah.
Or something's changed.
So you have to ask certain questions to find out what's changed. But, you know, sometimes you don't know what those questions are to find out what's changing or what's different.
It's not always realistic that these are conversations that are going to come up naturally.
Yeah.
And again, back to where money's involved, it gets very tricky.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
So you don't want to show your whole hand either. So, you know, you've got a lot of grey. A lot of grey.
Mm.
And you can only... My thing, my want for people is that they know themselves well enough that they can understand, because by getting to know yourself, you get to read others a lot more clearly than you might. You get to, so there's a lot of definite answers I can't give you. But what I can say is that by understanding yourself better, you will naturally, and a natural consequence of that is you will read others better.
And that makes sense. If you understand yourself, then you can understand others better.
Yes.
Yes, that just makes sense.
And you don't need to know all of the answers all of the time. It's simply, what... Ask yourself, what level, how old am I in this decision?
Does that take you back to a younger time in your life, or is it in the present moment that
if you feel young, if you feel... There's a difference between childlike and childish.
Yes, there is,
right?
totally.
An adult can be childlike and they will be the magnet of fun.
Yes.
Childish, not so much.
Yeah.
Right? You've got different flavours of child. You've got, you know, a magical child who will swing between, they have a propensity for depression, and nothing's right. But in the extreme childlike state, everything's possible, and they are a magnet. At the other end of the scale, they don't want to be around people so much.
Do they want to be around at all?
That's a
hard question.
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
Because you can think, but, you know, you've got the archetype of the clown. You know, the tears of a clown, the mask that hides the, you know, the pain. So there's more to it, but yes. Then you've got the invisible child, where their pain is that they're not seen. I've got a friend of mine, we would have been in our 30s when we had this discussion. And, you know, she said, it's Christmas. I fell asleep under the Christmas tree, literally, like behind the Christmas tree. She said, no one noticed I wasn't there for lunch.
Really?
No one noticed she wasn't there.
She was asleep under the Christmas tree.
She was falling asleep. But it wasn't that, yes, it's funny. And at the time, no one noticed she wasn't there.
She was invisible.
The invisible child.
Yeah.
And so that can be the source of pain, which is nobody sees me.
How many people feel
get
like
overlooked? Loads.
So many people would feel like that. So many
loads. They're not recognised. They're not seen. And it's a great source of pain for them. Then at the other, but you know what, as a superpower, like, I can't walk into a room and slip in and out.
Right. Reason?
Because I'm not invisible in any way, shape or form.
Right.
So but an invisible child, they can
Maneuvering.
They can maneuver and do things without drawing attention to themselves, and it's a superpower.
Is it something that's chosen as a superpower, or is it something that
It's something that's innately within them.
Right.
And it can either be a source of pain or not. Depends how it plays out and whether that's... But if you don't know yourself and you're unconsciously wandering around, nobody's seeing you.
Yeah.
You know, nobody sees me. But to actually look at it through the lens of an archetype, because what archetypes enable you to do is to have a personal look at a very impersonal journey. Because life's not personal.
No, it's very impersonal.
But it really hurts when you take it personally.
Yes, true.
Okay, so it's not personal at all.
Mm.
And whether it was that person who was betraying you or not, betrayal is a part of everyone's life.
Yes, yes, it is. In certain parts of people's lives, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone that's never been betrayed.
Mm.
You don't get to your 50s and know a person who hasn't been betrayed has been in a bubble. Because whether it's big arcana major betrayal or whether it's
just little
niggles, everybody's been betrayed.
Yeah.
And everyone has betrayed others.
Yeah.
Where you haven't kept your word to the extent that you said you would. I've done it. Everybody's done it.
Well, we do, but not to the point of hurting anyone.
We don't know that.
It could be a convenience thing that you say, well, I was going to do that, but I can't do it now because something else has come up or something like that. So is that a betrayal?
That's a Fibonacci. You
tell, or an outright lie.
An outright lie. You don't always know the consequences of the things we do and say.
Like I just did then. It's really interesting because you make me think about, when you have a large family and you've got that middle child, the middle child syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
What's that all about? Not being seen, not being heard. It's really interesting because...
Well, you're kind of stepping into the birth order stuff there. So, yeah, there is a science around birth order as well. So, but as far as a person talking about them or getting to know themselves, you can be more right, but you're not really going to be that wrong. You'll be in the ballpark. If you're having a genuine look at yourself, you'll be in a ballpark.
Mm.
And again, it's not about being perfectly right, because if I were to tell you what your archetypes are, I'm not doing you any service because you're not working for it.
Because I have to find out myself. I have to do the work to find.
You have to do the work.
Yeah. It's a bit like I will say I'm a middle child. I'm one of 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, it's probably why I do what I do now, is because I didn't feel heard or seen. So it's interesting that you say that. And that's why I do what I do. What's my archetype there?
Well, that could be the invisible child. But there's other archetypes, but of the fundamentals, I think the child has the most power in our lives, because that is the one that, when you're dealing with someone who's been childish,
yes,
it's very, very difficult. And you create a dynamic where you feel like you're the perpetrator.
Because they're being childish.
Yeah, because they make you become, if you accept it.
Yes.
You can either go, no, I'm not buying this.
Yes. That brings us to the end of another episode with Bronwyn Boyle. We were talking about the strengths of archetypes. Such an interesting conversation, delving into who we are and our behaviour. I hope you enjoyed it and got lots from it. Bronwyn will be back down the track. I'll see you next week with another guest. Enjoy your week. It's bye from me for now. the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Stay inspired, stay connected, and join our amazing community today.